Do you get questions from investors? We do all the time. And sometimes they are investors in air quotes and they took a seminar somewhere and think that they know a little bit more than they do. And those are people who are often putting themselves in danger. So, you, I think as agents, we have to be careful of what people come to us for and how we can help them and whether we can help them. um, So we wanted to talk a little bit today about low risk investments in real estate, which tend to have lower reward, but over time it can really build up. Now, everybody who's in real estate ought to know that the market goes in both directions all the time, and that there is always a risk in an investment that the market might be lower when the time comes to sell the investment. If you have an investor who can weather a storm like that, they're going to be fine. But if you have someone who is counting on the return of this investment as if it is a savings account, they could end up in trouble. Hey, Tim.
Hello.
It's not well today. So, boy, there's all kinds of yucky stuff going around, and she caught something. So, Tim Berglund, my husband and partner in all things, is here to join us. And I was just starting with, you know, helping realtors understand that investors come from all different places. Lots of them have just taken a seminar and fancy themselves investors, and they're told that, you know, with $5 you can buy a foreclosure and make $1 million. Most of the time, those are pie in the sky ideas, and we find that we really like to work with investors who understand that real estate is a long-term investment, and even the flippers. I mean, if they're interested in buying a house and reselling it, we're happy to help them do that, but only if they really understand the risks of buying and fixing up a house and then speculating that it's going to be worth considerably more than it took to get that done, because oftentimes it's not. And we've seen many, many cases, right, where someone was caught short, either when the market dipped. We personally knew quite a few people who in the last crash had uh, over renovated a house for a flip. Then they ended up, in some cases, renting it. Well, the last thing you want to do with a brand sparkly new renovation is rent it to someone who's going to
Right.
live.
Well, at that time there was, that you were turning over houses every year or two. People were just, it was crazy, and um, you had there was no consideration of perhaps being in it for the long haul and uh, and riding out the storm, because if you hold on to the property after 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you're going to be in much better shape.
And in some places, let's face it, some places from the depths of the crash to complete recovery took 10 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. For We had an investment property at that time, and we when we purchased that property, it was extremely low risk because we lived in it. So we also used it as shelter, um, as well as had two apartments to collect rent on.
Hmm.
Um, but when our life circumstance changed and we needed to live in another place, we chose to continue. Well, the crash was starting, and we chose to continue to rent it out fully. And there were a lot of challenges with that.
Yeah.
It worked out fine, but we had to hold on to it for how long? 10, 12 years?
13. Yeah.
Yeah, 13 years, which wasn't the plan. So you have to be ready to pivot. You have to be ready to adapt to changing markets. And you typically, I don't think, want to do this necessarily with money that you absolutely need. The other thing is, if you're going to purchase a rental property, I believe that you really want the rent to cover the expenses. Um, so people have a different idea of what they want in a cap rate. I think covering the mortgage and at least the basic general expenses. You might need to make a capital investment like a roof, but most of the expenses should be covered by the rental income. A lot of people speculate on appreciation and don't really look much at cash flow. I know that that's a perfectly legitimate way to do it. It's just not something we've ever been comfortable with.
Yeah, and at in a stable market, properties increase on an average year after year about 3%, appreciate 3% year over year. So
Yeah, at an average.
so you got to be committed to short term investing on rental properties really isn't a great path to take. Unless of course you have equity in other properties.
Right. And so the short term is typically a flip idea, and people just need to understand that that's speculative and there's no guarantee. I got a call from an agent that's kind of what set off today's topic, asking me about a property we have coming up soon, and it is an original historic property, and asked about what it would go for if it were completely updated. And right now, probably about $100,000, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure exactly what you would have to spend to get there because I haven't run those numbers, but that's a guess. That's a ballpark. If people are bringing that back to their investor client, they need to be very sure that they're presenting it that way. This is what would happen if we had a magic wand and we could sell it this afternoon in perfect shape. Then that investor gets in there and they decide that the knockoff light fixtures and the overstock countertops are just as good as something else.
And sometimes people don't realize, and if you've pointed out to me before, renters aren't as picky about their living conditions as homeowners are, and sometimes you can get into the weeds and start renovating on a rental property and not need to.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Or people renovate in thinking that they're going to sell and then for whatever reason can't, and so they go to renting instead, and renters tend to be a little harder on stuff that they don't own. I mean, that's just human nature. But we have managed a renovation of a property that one of our clients had for sale, and we've managed some of our own renovations. And what you start with and where you end up can be very different places. So you have to keep tight control of the budget, and yet you still have to spend on the things that matter to people. You still have to spend on the labor that's going to do a really good job. Because if people come in and they don't fall in love, if those corners aren't square, if those doors don't close, if that dishwasher and refrigerator can't be opened at the same time, you're going to lose money. So high risk, high reward means we need to always focus on that high risk when we're talking to investor clients. And if you have people who would like to invest in real estate, I would say educate them on the possibility of low risk, low reward that builds up over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Found that to be
without a doubt. Yeah, until you have enough equity in other properties where you can take that big swing and see how you do.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me, hon.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope Danielle gets better.
Yeah.
And,
Danielle, feel better.
You'll see Ruth on her great videos next week with Danielle.
All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.